Hello swing dancers, it's Julien for Blablaswing. Today I have the chance to meet Bobby and we are in European Balboa in Toulouse. Hello Bobby, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Bobby White. I'm from New York City. Right now, I grew up in Georgia in the south of the United States. I've lived in New York for about 3 years now, and it's very exciting. And right now we're in a very crowded dance space, so that's why it might be a little loud.
You only live in New York since 3 years?
Yep.
I believed you were a pure New Yorker.
No, I'm quite the opposite. I grew up in the suburbs of a city in the south, and went to a college in the middle of nowhere in the south, and then started making my way up to New York. Accidentally, I fell in love with a woman from New York, and so I moved to New York, and we got married.
Wonderful, a true beautiful story. We are going to speak about your love for the swing dance and how it happened for you. Can we go back from the start?
Yeah. So I remember really liking big band music when I was very young.
Because of your parents listened to it, maybe, or?
I don't know. My dad had a few big band albums, but I don't remember him playing it very much. I think maybe I heard it in commercials,
Yep.
or on television, or in movies. And then when the movie Swing Kids came out in 1993, I remember seeing the previews. And the previews for the movie had the dum 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 dum, and that I was just like, whoa, that's really cool. And then when the previews showed the people dancing and the music and stuff, I realized I really wanted to see it, and I thought it was very cool. And I had seen swing dancing before, and I had heard big band jazz before, but I couldn't remember why or when. The Swing Kids movie and the soundtrack was the first time I remember, having it on a cassette tape or on a CD and listening to it and really experiencing it.
So for you, the first crush was with the music and not with the dance inside the movie.
Well, as soon as I saw the dancing, I immediately thought that's something I really want to do. And part of that is I have ADD. Which is a mental condition where it's very hard to focus, or I hyper focus, or I get distracted.
Okay.
And I had a lot of energy as a teenager, just tons of energy, and so swing dancing was perfect.
Perfect for that.
It was perfect. I had all this energy I needed to get out, and I loved music, and it's a great activity for someone with ADD because it's just constantly it's hard to
And you were
much going on.
About 15, something like that, when you started to dance.
18.
18.
Yeah,
Okay.
18 was the first time I started to dance. I saw Swing Kids when I was 14 or 15, and I wanted to do it, but I assumed that no one did Lindy Hop anymore. I assumed that it was an old thing that people didn't do. And then when I was 18, some friends of mine asked me to do some dance lessons, and I was like, what kind of dance? And they said swing dance, and I was like, yes.
Immediately, yes.
Yes, immediately. Yes.
And it was in Georgia?
Yes.
Okay. There is a big scene in this place?
Not really.
Not
It was
really?
pretty small.
Okay. So
and-
how you build your own dance in this small scene? You travel to make workshop?
Yeah, I had to travel, and I was young and not very, I didn't have a lot of money, and so I had to, I could only go to a workshop a year, and I did a lot of watching videotapes. So we didn't have YouTube at the time, and so you had to go on the internet and try to find out what videotapes had dancing on them. And so I remember I got the Frankie Manning Can't Top the Lindy Hop video cassette tapes. And that has both instructional tapes or, class recaps. And it has the Frankie Manning's Party, which had all this incredible dancing performances. It had the Rhythm Hot Shots. It had Ryan François. And it just had so many great dancers from that time. You could see them doing a jam circle. You could see them performing. You could see them social dancing a little bit. So that tape was gold. That tape was like everything.
You still have it?
I do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it in good shape or?
Yeah.
You can still use it?
Yes, I need to get a VCR because I haven't had a VCR in a long time, but I still have those tapes. And then I got the Frankie Manning. Frankie Manning had a 3-part instructional series that went through 3 different levels of Lindy Hop. Okay. And so I tried to learn that. I tried to learn Lindy Hop from videotapes because no one else in Atlanta, the city I was in, did Lindy Hop really. There are a few dancers, but I didn't know them well enough to talk to them about it.
Okay, and we're talking about Lindy Hop. You're starting by Lindy Hop.
Yeah.
We are in European Balboa in Toulouse, so you teach Balboa this weekend. And how do you discover this dance of Balboa after Lindy Hop?
Yeah, so in the late '90s, when I learned, first there was the Frankie Manning influence of Lindy Hop, and most people called that Savoy style Lindy Hop. And then around that time in the late '90s, '99, 2000, this new style of Lindy Hop became popular, which they called Hollywood style, and that was Lindy Hop based on the Southern California Lindy Hoppers. And when the Hollywood style became really popular, it also made popular collegiate shag and Balboa. And so most of the Southern California, most of the Hollywood style dance teachers knew a little bit of Balboa and a little bit of collegiate shag. And so when I bought the videotapes of Eric and Sylvia, for instance, I got Hollywood style lessons as well as Balboa lessons as well as collegiate shag videotapes. And so I started learning those dances. Again, I was learning all of this by videotape and some friends. I wasn't able to go learn a whole lot from Hollywood style instructors themselves. And then I saw this dancer on the floor in Atlanta, and she was really, really good, and she knew Balboa really, really well. And I got to know her better, and her name was Kate Hadeen. And she was she lived in Atlanta, but she was going to school in Cleveland, Ohio. And Cleveland, Ohio was the country's biggest Balboa scene. Cleveland, Ohio is where they have the All Balboa weekend. And so Kate was learning how to do Balboa really well in Cleveland, and every time she would come home to Atlanta on school breaks, she would dance with me and catch me up on all the Balboa stuff that I didn't know. And so Kate really helped me become a much better Balboa dancer and helped me fall in love with it. And so we started teaching when she was in Atlanta, and we started competing together. And then competing went really well, and so people asked us to teach, and so we would go and teach. And so that kind of started my Balboa teaching career.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about the fact you was successful on competition, and it's after your success they ask you to teach. It's this way. Most of the teachers are in this situation. I think that there is a debate about it. About do you have to be good in competition to be a right teacher? It's a subject.
And back, especially back then, there was not that many Balboa couples, and if you did well in a contest, all of a sudden people knew your name, and they would give you a chance to teach. And if you could teach well, then they would, your students would like it, and they would ask you to go teach at their workshops where they're from.
Yeah.
And again, at that time, we didn't have YouTube or anything like that, so the only chance that a lot of times that people could see you was if you were in a contest. So I am very glad that now we have YouTube, now we have better interaction or easier interaction with each other so that you know dancers a little bit easier, and I think that helps get teachers teaching jobs without having to be good or without having to go through doing all the contests.
Yeah, there is everything. And it's another subject about what was the scene before YouTube and internet and now. And Ryan François made a very nice proposition on TED Talks about it, and I will put on the description of the episode. So have you been in California at this time to meet the place where it's born and the old timers maybe?
Yeah, so let's see. I went to Camp Hollywood in 2003. That was my first time going to California and seeing those California dancers and learning from some of those California dancers. And I remember I go to the event and I'm there alone and I'm really excited to be there. And they say the dance starts at 8 p.m. And so I show up at 8 p.m. And I get there and it's just me. And there's a line full of old ladies in chairs along the walls. And so I'm just sitting around and one of them comes up and asks me to Balboa. And so I dance Balboa. And then like one by one, each of the old ladies comes up and asks me to dance. And it's only then that I start to realize that I'm dancing with original Balboa dancers.
Wow.
That I'm dancing with like old timers, because the old timers were there at the dance early, and I was this kid hanging around, and so they thought they would ask me for a dance, which was great. And so now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I got to dance with all these people, all these incredible old timers, and I wasn't aware enough to realize it or appreciate it a whole lot. Whereas now, like if I went back, I would be so appreciative, and I would just, it would be an amazing experience to go back to that moment. And then in like 2005 or 2006, there was an event called the Balboa Rendezvous that was happening that Joel Pleiss ran, and I went there and taught a few years, and that's when I got to go to Balboa for the first time and see the Balboa Rendezvous and see the plaque that they have about the Balboa Pavilion.
Like in the Savoy Ballroom? The same kind of place?
Yeah, they have a plaque where the Balboa Pavilion burned down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't remember that burned down, yeah. What was your first time in Europe?
My first time in Europe was right here in Toulouse. We came for the Pink City Balboa Festival, which Anne-Hélène and Bernard started, and I'm pretty sure that was the first Balboa festival in Europe. If I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it was the first one. And so Kate and I came out here, and we just came as participants, and we danced, and we did the contest, and we had a great time. And that was the first time.
For you?
And I think that was 2000. I think that was 2003 or maybe 2004.
Okay, just after your first Camp Hollywood, maybe it's.
Yeah, it was around the time. Yeah, that first year was our first contest and our first like teaching and that kind of stuff.
And you've been in Europe many times, and you're really active in activity in the US. If you compare the two places, the two continents, is there some difference, some main difference you notice? You have identified?
In what way? Or differences in what?
the the way the people dance, the way they think of this dance. We speak of Balboa most.
Yeah.
Is there about the connection maybe when you go in the USA? Is there a different way to connect to the partner, or
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a really hard question to. It's a hard question to answer because there are maybe lots of little small differences in general, but there's always exceptions to those rules in both places and both cultures. I feel for a while, and this is changing over the last few years. For a while, the American Balboa dancers, when I looked at them, they tended to swing a little bit more. They tended to, like, if I showed you a video of of a generic American Balboa couple versus a generic European Balboa couple and took off the music, I would argue that the American ones, you could tell they were dancing a little bit more to swing music than the European dancers because of the way that their bodies were moving or the way that they were using momentum in the dance.
yeah?
However, the American dancers, I think the European dancers are much better at taking risks and being creative and breaking out of the boundaries of the dance. I think a lot of American dancers are confined a little bit by the dance, whereas I think a lot of European dancers are much more likely to play outside and play with the boundaries, which I think is much more in the spirit of the original dancing.
Maybe because it's the patrimonial for Americans. I mean, it's their heritage. They want to
Yeah.
to keep it alive and pure, and so they take less risks than European. Maybe it's
Maybe.
explication. I would move to the to Swungover, your blog. It's the way I'm starting to know you. It was a main resource for many dancers to have a really good information about specific topics, and it was in my life I'm a documentalist. I don't know if in English it's correct. I work in literacy, something like that, and your work is really good with
Thank you.
sources, with testify. It's really impressive. How do it start? You're willing to do it. You have a need to tell stories.
Yeah. So there's so before I was a dancer, I was a writer, or like writing was like my passion. And my mother is a journalist, and so I grew up with both the example of someone who like writes stories and like researches, and my dad loved history, and so I grew up having a dad always telling me history stories. And I also I think have some of the genetics, that both of those genetics that they had that made them interested in that kind of thing. I'm pretty sure I have. I'm pretty sure that even if I didn't know them when I was growing up, I would find myself really interested in history and really interested in writing. And a lot of times I say to myself, or I explain it by saying, sometimes I don't know what I think until I write it down. Like, you could ask me a question and I'm like, I don't know the answer to that, but if I were to go and write it out, I could see it and I could see the logic of it and I could test it and I could play with it and I could really explore it better with writing. And that's when, once I've written it out, I then know how I feel about it. I know what my opinions are a lot better.
Yeah, for you, it's a way to fix your thoughts.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so with Swungover, I first off realized that there wasn't that kind of thing already at the time on the internet. People weren't doing that at that point. So I first realized that there was an opening for that kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then I realized that was how I could get better as a dancer, as a teacher, and as an ambassador of the swing dances. Is like, I don't know about the history of this thing, so I should research it and write about it so I know what it is and what I feel about it. And by then I have an article that I can just publish, and then other people can read it and get that information. And so that's pretty much how it started. And one of the interesting things about Swungover is if you were to go back and look at the dates on the articles, like the first 3 or 4 years, I published something once a week, maybe twice a week. And then after that, it kind of climbed. It got a little bit slower, a little bit slower, a little bit slower. What was happening is I was doing Swungover almost full time. Like all that writing and all that research and all that sort of thing was hours and hours and hours of work. And so I looked back at Swungover and realized that actually I wasn't becoming a better dancer. After a few years, I realized that my dancing wasn't getting where I wanted it to go, and I wasn't able to concentrate on it enough because I kept on having a great idea for an article and then going and writing that article, and then that would take X amount of hours that I would have been spent practicing or working on my dancing.
So you were writing or dancing? It was your choice at the time.
Yeah. And
so you decided to write a book.
Oh yeah. So exactly
to practice your dance.
Exactly. Yeah. The other problem. Yeah. The other problem was that I didn't know how to practice very well, and so when I did practice, it wasn't very productive. And when I wasn't practicing, I was spending all my time writing the articles. And I loved writing the articles. I could have easily, I think I could have, in an alternate version of reality, I could have stopped doing the dancing and focused more so on the writing. But I was paid to be a dance teacher. My profession is a dance instructor, not a dance historian. And people weren't paying for dance historians. And so in order for me to get fulfillment out of my swing dancing life, I went more so towards working on my dancing again and less towards the writing about dance. Now I still try to write Swungover, and I have 100 and something drafts of articles that have not published. Because I would start writing it and I'd get 80% through or 90% through, and then something would come up, or I would just switch ideas to something else for a while.
Okay.
And so by no means I don't think I'm ever going to give up Swungover entirely that I can see. I'll constantly go back over the old articles and fix them up and publish them, or keep coming up with new stuff. But it's definitely a lot slower than it was back in the old days.
So Swungover is not finished?
No.
Oh, yes. That's the good news. And have you been booked sometimes to teach for a talk about history?
Yeah, so in my teaching contract, I actually offer a free hour of a talk. Mm-hmm. And so any place that hires me can also get a free hour-long talk on pretty much whatever they want to that I feel I can comfortably speak about. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times since the practice book came out, I do practice talks, which is really just a Q&A where I ask people what are their practice questions, and I try to offer advice. But I do one of my favorites to give is a Balboa history talk, since Balboa history can be a little confusing, especially to newer dancers, because there's pure Balboa versus Bal swing, but the old timers called pure Balboa Balboa, and they called Bal swing swing, and then some of them called it Bal, and so there's a lot of confusion, and there's also a lot of there's a little bit of, we would say, dogma. Yep. There's dogma about it, where in some scenes people are taught, no, this is Balboa and this is not Balboa. Yeah. And I want to break down that idea, because the original dancers were just teenagers making up a dance. Just, so they weren't thinking about it as dogma. And so I think it's not healthy for us to think of it as dogma. And so my Balboa history talk tries to break down those ideas, or break down the history of the dance, so that people can get an idea of where it came from creatively, where it came from, why the mechanics are the way that they are, so that people can see that as a place to be creative from, rather than a box that they have to put themselves in.
Yeah, there is a lot of tension. I'm pretty new in the Balboa scene, so I just interested in history of Balboa really recently, and I discovered this tension about pure ball, open ball, and also. And do you? Yesterday I have a discussion with someone who speak about the revival with Guillemets of the Lindy Hop in the 80s in Sweden.
Yeah.
And I was asking myself, and what about the Balboa? Is it what the same in Europe? After that, the first Lindy Hop swing dancers starting to looking for other swing dance, and they rediscover Balboa. I don't know. I have to look for it.
So a quick history of that is the Southern California dancers would get together and social dance at a place called Bobby McGee's, which was a restaurant that had a dance floor and a bar. And so in the 70s and 80s, the original dancers would host parties there to try to bring all their old friends back. So, let's say you're a swing dancer, and then 50 years from now, long after your local club has closed down, you decide, hey, let's get back all the old gang. And so you call up your friends and try to see if you can find out everyone's information, and then you say, hey, let's get together at a club and start dancing again. And so that happened with the original Southern California dancers in the 1970s and 80s. And that is where other dancers would start to find them. They didn't advertise it very loudly, but other dancers found them, new dancers. Dancers like a young Sylvia Sykes found them. And when she did, she was like, oh, I've got to learn that dance, Balboa. I've got to learn it. So she fell in love with it almost immediately. And so she went and talked to those old timers and learned from almost all of them. She especially learned from Maxie Dorf, yes. But she learned at least a little bit from every single one of them. And so Sylvia is like, hey, this dance, these dancers aren't going to be around forever. They're going to pass away, and then this dance will be lost. So I'm a dance instructor. I should ask them if it's okay if I pass on the dance. And so that's kind of basically what happened, is she was given permission, especially by like Maxie Dorf and stuff, to pass on the dance. And so Sylvia Sykes was a West Coast swing instructor and a Lindy Hop instructor. And so she would go teach at West Coast swing events here and Lindy Hop events there. And at all of them, she offered a free Balboa class. And so from the 1980s, 90s, 2000s, if you were at any workshop where Sylvia Sykes was, the chances were that you could get a free Balboa taster. And that got enough people interested that some wanted to learn more. And then in Cleveland in 1999 or 2000, 2001, one of those years, basically in Cleveland, Valerie Sahlstrom and Joel Pleiss were like, hey, let's have an entire workshop weekend at Balboa. And as far as we know, that had never happened before. So for the first time, there was a complete workshop in Balboa. And by that time, because of the Hollywood style, Balboa was also starting to spread to other places like Europe and Asia. And so even though there was, so for the first time, really in the 2000s, even though there were probably a few people who had taken Sylvia's Balboa taster and done a little bit of Balboa, for the first time in the early 2000s were there people who would consider themselves Balboa dancers, who consider themselves doing it enough so that they could say, I'm doing Balboa, I'm going to a Balboa workshop, let's dance Balboa. Like,
it's really recently, so
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
really
it's
surprised.
very recently, yeah.
Wow.
And it's like something that we instructors will talk about often is how when we look at the bow scene, you can a lot of times see how it's younger than the Lindy Hop scene because it's going through some of the things that the Lindy Hop scene went through like 10 or 15 years ago, that kind of thing. And so, for a while there was, Balboa, like, no, this is how you do, so let's say there's a stage where people are just trying to do the figures and they just obsess about the basic figures and they do the basic figures, but they don't kind of like, they're not very creative with it. Well, that stage happened for Balboa in like the mid 2000s, whereas that had already happened in Lindy Hop in like the late 90s or and so, so it's interesting sometimes to look at the Balboa scene and see where it is along the path that Lindy Hop scene has already passed.
Yeah, really fascinating. I have to dig all this subject when I will have free time. Yeah. And you have write a book. It's called Practice Swing. Can you tell about this book?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, when I was first starting to teach and first doing well in dancing, like in contests, or people would look at my dancing and say, "Hey, you're a good dancer." When that was first happening, my only method of practicing was just doing it. Like, I thought that practice meant you just found some time and you just did it. I didn't realize how complex and how intricate practicing can be, especially if you want to progress quickly in a practicing. If you want to get the most out of practicing, there's a lot that's going on in a good practice. Well, anyway, I was getting really frustrated because I wasn't progressing near as much as I wanted to. And I would look at dancers who had started later than I did, surpassing, like, they would just be like flying by me. And I'd be like, oh man, why am I not getting as good as they are, as quickly as they are? And so it was really frustrating. And I realized, I was like, oh wait, I think I just don't know how to practice. And so I became obsessive about practice technique and finding out what it meant to be good at practice. And so I started researching. I read tons and tons of books. I went and started doing other things, like I went through martial arts for like 2 or 3 years, and I went like horseback riding lessons, and I took different styles of dance lessons. And I especially concentrated on styles that are similar to Lindy Hop and Balboa and the swing dances, but different. So like we would say urban dances, like hip hop or house dancing, where they are also about improvisation. And I realized, I started to realize what things they all have in common, and then I started to realize all the little different variations you can have in how you practice. And so, for instance, some people like me who have ADD, we're going to practice differently than someone who does not have ADD, who can just be focused on something for a very long time. So I focus on a lot of different things each practice and then keep going back to them over time. So I might spend 5 minutes on this thing this week, but I'm also going to spend 5 minutes on it next week, and then 5 minutes on the next week, and then 5 minutes. So that over a year, I've worked on it, X number of hours, as opposed to just working on it for X number of hours in one practice and then moving on. That's that's a really simple example, but like there's a lot that goes into practicing, both the mental and how you use the time. And I also realized that for swing dancers, so much of how you practice is based on what resources you have. So for instance, if you have a partner, you're going to practice differently than if you don't have a partner. Let's say that you have the opportunity to social dance once a week, but you don't have the opportunity to go into a studio. So how do you get better if all you have is your social dancing? How can you do that in a healthy but productive way so that you can get better by just social dancing all the time? How do you get better if you have to dance by yourself? How do you get better? How do you work with a partner? Because there's all sorts of ways that you want to communicate with another person. There's lots of healthy ways, and there's tons of unhealthy ways you can work with a partner. that will add stress or take away the fun. And you don't want stress. You want as little stress and as much fun as possible when you're practicing to help keep you motivated to keep doing it. And so I basically realized after all the studying and all the working on it for myself, I realized that I had enough material for a book, and that it was information that a lot of other people would probably find interesting. And I had a lot of stuff that didn't necessarily work for me practicing, but it would work a lot. It would work great for other people. And so I basically tried to put it all into one book, and that was the book.
It was your first book you write about especially swing?
Yep, okay. First book, period.
I'm waiting the second one.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to write another maybe?
Oh, the second one, right. The second one. I thought about writing a second one. It's been 2 years since I've written Practice Swing. And I have some new additional information that I think would be of interest to people. Especially, I have a lot of challenges that I use in practicing. I practice a lot by doing challenges where I'll put on a song, and the challenge for this song is to, move my arms in a natural way. Or the challenge for this song is to play with this rhythm, shukada. And where can I put that rhythm shukada in the dance? Where does it feel natural? And for me, that's a very useful way to practice, especially in an improvisational dance form, because it's constantly you're not putting things into cement. You're putting things into clay, where you can mold it and shape it, which I think is very important for practicing swing dancing. All too often, people will practice that swing out 1,000 times, and then whenever they do the swing out, it's that one swing out that they practiced 1,000 times. As opposed to practicing the idea of a swing out and changing it constantly, so that each time you do a swing out, it's molded to the moment, to your partner, to your music. Anyway, so those kind of ideas, I think
it will be an upgrade of.
Well, it might be an additional, almost like a part two, okay. Or one that maybe emphasizes here is 1,000 practice challenges or whatever. It wouldn't be 1,000, that's a lot, but 100 practice challenges to get better. Yeah. So that's one possible idea.
Cool.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you for a lot of articles you write, and it helped me so much about California routine, for example, about the 20 old dancer I might know, and I will put them on the description, because it's really so nice work, and I hope other people can discover this work. We go to the end slowly, and my last question will be about your influences, your models maybe, if you have them, both in music and both in dancers. Is there some people who still have a really power on you and your development?
Oh yes, yeah. So let's see. For music, I'm a Count Basie guy.
Again.
I know, right? Everyone.
They
all say Count Basie. I'm sure they do, because his rhythm section just swings so hard.
Yeah.
So I won't be very original there. For original dancers in Lindy Hop, Al Minns, Frankie Manning, Irene Thomas as the follower, and probably Lenny Smith, the Southern California Lindy Hop dancer. For Balboa, Jack Helwig, and Maxie Dorf. Those are people that I can just watch over and over and over and over again and find both joy, and also I can always just watch it and either say it either makes me want to dance after I watch it immediately, or I just get lost in how beautiful it is, and I can break it down and obsess about it and look at what their bodies are doing and stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm just in love with what they do when they express their joy to swing music. Original modern dancers, there's so many to name. I'm so inspired by so many dancers that are around these days. Nick Williams was, as a person who is incredible at Balboa, incredible at Lindy Hop, both like more of a Savoy style Lindy Hop as well as the Southern California Lindy Hop. And as just like a history geek, like Nick Williams was a person that I've always really connected to because I have the same passions that he does in the dance and in the history. And so we all like, and I just love his movement and the way that he moves. Even though I make some different choices myself and I experience the dance in different ways and stuff like that, I just always am really appreciative of that.
And the same passion for Star Wars too?
I'm actually, I'm not as big of a Star Wars, I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan, but nowhere near as big as Nick.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And what about your, do you have a favorite festival or workshop?
Oh, a favorite festival or workshop?
One you could say, go there.
That's another hard one because a great workshop has its own spirit, and there are a lot of different workshops that have their own spirit, which are fantastic. And so I'll name two of them off the top. Lindy Focus, where the music is really swing music focus. Where just the music having one night of each big band and how well they play and how hard they swing and how much they throw down and seeing all of those great jazz musicians on the same stage falling in love. You can see them fall in love with each song as they play it, and you can see them be pushed to their next highest level by sitting next to other incredible musicians. And so it's like you see the musicians come alive in a way that I've never seen them before on that stage, and it happens every single night, and it happens every single late night, because then they all go to the late night and do it again with a different, stuff. And so like Lindy Focus is absolutely incredible for the music. I'd say for maybe the artistic environment, I really like the Balboa Experiment, which I've been on staff at for its entire time. One thing I love about it is it's so focused on individuality. It's so focused on working with each other on your own individuality. And so there's this great community of both teamwork and individuality. And it's just such a place to be creative and supportive and step outside a lot of the boxes that you tend to put yourself in. And so I've always really enjoyed being around that environment.
Thank you very much, Bobby. It was a really nice time with you. I will put your website and some links on the description. Thank you for this time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Blablaswing.